When your gentle pit bull becomes the target of neighborhood chaos, how far will you go to defend him? And can laughter really bridge the gap between kindness and Karenness? Before we begin today's insane story, show some love if you've ever survived a wild Karen meltdown. Drop a like and let me know your craziest Karen run-in you've had down in the comments. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another jaw-dropping showdown. As Karen strutted into my backyard, channeling some bizarre cross between a school principal and a celebrity diva, I couldn't help but crack a smile despite the impending chaos. There was my beloved Zeus, lounging like he'd just won the dog lottery, oblivious to the serrated energy radiating off this pastel-clad storm cloud. I could almost hear him thinking, "What's a girl gotta do to get a belly rub around here?" But Karen's self-appointed mission was beyond reason. She bellowed accusations at me as if I were harboring the canine equivalent of a tiger ready to pounce. "This pit bull is a violent breed, you know," she exclaimed, waving her clipboard like it could ward off Zeus's mythical danger. I chuckled internally. How could she possibly perceive my gentle giant, who wouldn't say boo to a flea, as some four-legged menace? Then came the pied de résistance. Karen leaned over the fence, treating it like a podium, and began taunting Zeus with every cringe-inducing sound her voice could muster. Sitting beside me, my friend Samantha nearly spat out her morning coffee as she watched the whole spectacle unfold. I swear, it's like she thinks he's got a real bone to pick with humanity. Samantha cackled, and I couldn't have agreed more. My heart danced with intrigue. Was she really that unhinged? The absurdity of her antics had me in stitches. Zeused my phone to cue an emergency text to my cousin, who happens to be an animal rights lawyer. I had no idea how this bizarro episode would play out, but when life gives you Karen, you grab your lawyer and film the madness. As if on cue, just a few hours later, my phone buzzed with a glorious message that I'd secretly been waiting for. "Jake, your security cam came through. You won't believe what I just watched," my cousin Laura texted. I fished out a bowl of popcorn and settled in, ready for the cinematic masterpiece that was about to unfold. The highlight reel revealed Karen, in all her outrageous glory, leaning over the fence like a soap opera villain. The security camera footage caught it all. Her sneering, wildly gesticulating, and actually trying to get Zeus to react, while he confidently wagged his tail, unimpressed by the human circus happening beside him. Each jerk of her flailing arms looked exaggerated in slow motion, giving me a glorious visual to fuel my disbelief. Fast forward to a week later, I had recruited Samantha to join me on a Karen-free crusade. Gathering our wits, a collection of Karen's antics on my phone, and an ever-expanding assortment of memes featuring Zeus as a heroic figure, we headed off to the local cafe to plot our next move. With caffeine fueling our brainstorming, we concocted the perfect plan. We'd send a demand letter to Karen, suggesting she cease her harassment unless she wanted to face legal repercussions. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Samantha laughed, shaking her head. Yet there was an air of satisfaction bubbling beneath our silliness, the kind you get when you feel empowered by snarky revenge and a good latte. Samantha had this fantastic idea to document the whole process. Instagram stories featuring us as modern-day gladiators, ready to take on the Karenverse, one pastel blouse-wearing enemy at a time. "We can even make it a meme campaign," she excitedly suggested, adjusting the camera closer to her face. Something like, "When life gives you a Karen, make a spectacle out of it." I couldn't help but snort. This was not your average Tuesday. This was the grand showdown between kindness and Karenness, and I was here for every laugh and epic blunder of it. The universe conspired to keep it entertaining. I could almost picture Zeus proudly standing guard in a superhero cape, while we tossed comical retorts at his unsuspecting nemesis. Yet, as the days rolled by, and with each post that trolled Karen's entitled attempts, I sensed a shift in my warrior spirit. I wasn't just defending Zeus anymore. I was shining a light on the absurdity of her behavior, and showing others that entitled antics could be challenged with humor and camaraderie. Somewhere between garnering likes on social media and scheming our next move, I realized something remarkable. Maybe the ridiculousness of our neighborhood's self-proclaimed watchdog wasn't just a nuisance, but also an opportunity to bond with my community. Fast forward to the day we served Karen the letter. Samantha stood at the edge of my property, brandishing it like a trophy, as if to say, "Look at us, our memes have arrived." And as I watched the little pop of her fist in the air, my heart raced, not out of anger, but rather anticipation. How would Karen respond? Would she retaliate with another cringe-worthy stunt, or finally realize that her persona was more laughable than legitimate? Whatever her next move, I could only hope she'd serve up more drama worthy of our next video. One thing was for sure, the battle lines had been drawn, and Zeus, my gentle pit bull, would be right there, tail wagging, ready to face whatever absurdity awaited us next. Can you believe we have a Karen saga unfolding right in front of us? The day came when I knew we'd finally confront the rather absurd figure of Karen Monroe in the flesh. Samantha and I spent the evening polishing our words to be succinct yet dripping with the zest of playful mockery. The demand letter, laden with several quotes from our now viral meme campaign and sprinkled with legal jargon, was a masterpiece. We'd achieved the perfect blend of humor and authority, designed to provoke a reaction while offering her just a hint of intimidation. Clad in our chosen armor, matching graphic tees adorned with design elements inspired by Zeus, spiraling through the air like a triumphant hero, we felt ready, emboldened by both our loyal following and the absurdity of our situation. "It's talk time," Samantha declared, though I could see in her eyes she had no idea what nonsense awaited us. Honestly, neither had I, but that exhilaration of standing up for Zeus made me typecast myself into a leading role of this sitcom-worthy saga. As we approached her house, our hearts buzzed with equal parts excitement and nervousness. A brief check of the time told me Karen had to be home. Her car was parked out front like a sentinel guarding her little kingdom. This would mark the first time we approached her after the letter had been served. In a moment of cinematic flair, I glanced at Samantha and said, "What's the worst she could do? Send her crowds of pastel-draped followers to surround us?" We both chuckled. Karen didn't strike me as someone who had joiners. With her attitude, I could only imagine them fleeing at the sight of her clipboard. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the thought of her marching towards us in her high-waisted trousers, ready to whip out yet another absurd accusation like a magician unveiling their next trick. With a deep breath, we forged ahead, brimming with the audacity of champions. As we reached her driveway, however, that bravado quickly morphed into a reluctant chuckle when we noticed the gaudy welcome mat that read, "Welcome to my wonderful world," in vibrant, cartoonish lettering. It felt like stepping into a sitcom setup, and I found myself half expecting applause from an imaginary studio audience. Samantha grinned. "Well, this place is definitely a colorful embodiment of her personality." I couldn't help but pipe in, "Should have been called, Beware of Karen." But before I could knock, there she was. Karen opened the door, the embodiment of indignation and dramatic flair, her hands planted on her hips like a seasoned actor, about to deliver the monologue of a lifetime. "What do you two think you're doing here?" she bellowed, a faint tremor of surprise lurking beneath her authority. We'd prepared for an ambush. The stakes were high. Samantha leaned in, her voice steady but laced with mock professionalism. "We just wanted to discuss your recent endeavors concerning Pants bulldogs." The look on Karen's face was priceless, a mix of indignation and bewilderment. "You dare come here after I reported that monstrosity?" Her tone turned accusatory. It was as if she regarded me as an accessory to a crime against both human decency and neighborhood safety. "We're bringing up the past, because, believe it or not, this is about more than just a dog and a crazy neighbor." I spat back, trying to balance sarcasm with a hint of maturity. The challenge was on, and I was ready to lay down the law, figuratively, of course. That moment was the start of pure performance art. Neither of us seemed to know how far this heated exchange would go. "You think it's a joke?" Karen thrust her clipboard towards me with dramatic flair. "This is about your dog being a violent wrecking ball." I gestured purposefully over my shoulder. "Zeus is literally on the couch right now. Would you believe he actually specializes in cuddles and fetch instead, like a pit bull superhero in his naturally chaotic realm?" I could practically see the gears trying to turn in her mind as I witnessed a fight-or-flight moment spiral in her eyes. The sheer absurdity wasn't lost on either of us. I could almost hear the cosmic laughter of the universe resonating. "So, your solution is to come here and poke the very hornet's nest of reason?" Her voice trembled faintly, already teetering on the edge of ridiculousness. In that pivotal moment, the wild dance of verbal sparring seemed to serve as our audience, feeding off her unraveling certitude while we prepared to dive deeper into our newly minted Battle of Neighborhoods scenario. Samantha, channeling her inner comedian, tossed in a joke about how more dogs and more Karens didn't make sense together, which sparked her own bout of giggles. "Let's be honest, Karen. You're single-handedly trying to tear apart the very fabric of our adorable dog-loving community." That took Karen off guard. I briefly reveled in the fantastic fantasy of her somehow becoming a dog whisperer instead of a dogfight instigator. And just like that, I could see the seams of her trademark attitude starting to fray. As I stepped forward, my heart raced not with fear, but with something exhilarating. This was a dance of wits. "Life's too short to be miserable, don't you think?" I urged, offering the kind of smile that dangles between sincerity and mischievousness. I mean, all of this could be resolved over coffee instead of chaos. We could take a poll. Whoever's left standing gets to design the next community map. The absurdity of our solution hung in the air, and I could see formatted reactions flickering behind her tightly wound opinions. In her eyes, I could even see a hint of curiosity peeking through the furrows of confusion, truly meant to put me in my place. But as words tumbled into the atmosphere, it became clear. If I could break the cycle of her entitled disdain with laughter, perhaps we'd find common ground instead of more battlegrounds. As Karen stood there, flummoxed by my offbeat charm amidst the hilarities, the energy slowly shifted. The silhouette of a much funnier narrative glimmered ahead of us. "What do you say we evoke a little neighborly kindness instead of conflict over a pit bull?" I finally offered, genuinely wishing she'd consider it. In that pause, with Samantha sporting a cheeky grin beside me, I realized that this surprising saga of dialing down into absurdity had opened the possibility to something more profound than just a brawl. Perhaps, just perhaps, even the fiercest of Karens could eventually find humor. Would Karen join our comedy of neighborhood errors, or would she retreat back into the shadows of her own past conflicts? Only time would tell. But I couldn't help but shake with anticipation at the prospect of Zeus leading the charge. Karen's face contorted like she'd just bitten into a lemon-flavored candy from a particularly nasty batch. It was a remarkable performance of confusion mixed with indignation, her sharp features morphing into a tableau of disbelief. "Coffee? You think this is just a friendly chat over cups and cupcakes? My neighbors are harboring a dangerous monster disguised as a pet," she retorted, her voice rising to an almost operatic pitch. Samantha and I shared a conspiratorial glance, each of us suppressing a grin as Karen delivered her overdramatic lines. If only we could bottle this moment. The sheer absurdity of her accusations was positively delightful. I could almost hear a symphony of laughter ringing in my ears. I had expected confrontation, but this was entertainment. "Karen," I replied, my composure cracking just enough to squeeze a laugh out. "You're conflating Zeus with a national security threat. He wouldn't split a tank with a toothpick, let alone cause actual harm. Besides, most of my dental work came from the sadly misunderstood cuddle monster, so we probably shouldn't be casting stones, huh?" I leaned in playfully, channeling my inner comedian. Her eyes flared with indignation, but the laughter wormed its way into the air like a stubborn musical note. "No offense, but you and your clipboard are no match for Zeus's charm. I mean, have you ever seen how he makes the neighbors melt when he's splashed in mud? He's practically a local celebrity, like if Lady Gaga and a golden retriever had a husky love child." The moment hung delicately, both of us daring to peek over the edge of this wild charade. I continued, fueled by the energy of the comedy-drenched atmosphere. "Look, maybe it's time we put the past behind us. We could all benefit from reuniting over our shared love of dogs. Imagine community bake sales, neighborhood barbecues, and yes, legendary dog fashion shows. We can joust about the risk factors of dog breeds with cupcakes in our hands." I could sense the tide of the conversation turning, as if Karen was slowly breaking her way out of the confines of her own meticulously crafted persona. It was the kind of breakthrough I had dared to hope for, and it was all set to climax in this very moment. I glanced towards Samantha, her bright hazel eyes glimmering with anticipation, mirroring my own excitement. "I don't need to be part of your doggy playdates or dress-up events," Karen snapped. But even her fierce retort sounded like a poorly executed dancing bear routine at the circus. "My goal isn't to create a neighborhood bonding experience about your vicious pit bull. It's to ensure the safety of our community." The passion behind her tirade came off as somewhat hollow, revealing layers of self-righteous indignation that began to sound more like a shield than a blade. I recognized those cracks. She wasn't as invulnerable as she pretended to be. "Oh dear, Karen, don't you see? You keep conjuring images of dangerous beasts because deep down, it's really about fear." My voice softened a touch, aiming to bridge the gap. "It's time to set the record straight. You don't have to be a warrior in this neighborhood. Why not let empathy do all the hard work instead?" In that quiet lull, I watched as her features began to soften just a minuscule fraction. "You think you can just charm me into submission?" she smirked, the argument fluttering between us like an errant butterfly lost amid chaos. "Your little pep talk sounds lovely, but I refuse to endorse the notion of pit bulls prancing around my neighborhood like they own the place." The flicker of indignation in her eyes hadn't entirely dimmed, but it was like she was wrestling with the concepts I'd thrown at her, as if they were stubborn cats refusing to find their way home. Samantha seized the opportunity, shooting an audacious grin. "We could guarantee a puppy parade where no one would be funding the shredding of society because all the dogs would be too busy pawing for attention." The tension melted like the first snow in spring, hints of amusement scrambling between us as I dared to venture forward with a soft laugh. "Maybe this is a self-actualization moment for both of you. A much-needed pit stop before we gather round the fire for coffee and drama." I pointed my finger theatrically like I was about to drop a punchline. Imagine it, Karen. Zeus as the reigning mascot of peace and furry friendship. It's a whole movement waiting to happen. And could you handle being at the helm of such momentous change? For a fleeting split second, I thought I could see her mental gears moving, the crescendo building towards eventual salvation instead of another inevitable skirmish over pet ownership. The reality of it settled in the warmth of the late afternoon sunlight, and she stood there armed with uncertainty. Experience had taught me that it only took a flicker of doubt to spark an avalanche of change. So, would it work? Would this eccentric pitch, coupled with a friendly nudge, soften the heart of an obstinate neighbor who had been all bark and no bite? "Let's at least give it a trial run," I suggested, throwing caution to the wind and allowing the flickers of hope to ignite like trailing fireworks in the night sky. The crazy notion of becoming friends stretched before us like a rainbow, a beacon of wild possibilities. Would Karen Monroe join us in a comedy of errors and perhaps discover the joys of being an enthusiastic neighbor instead of a perpetual sourpuss? The thought echoed fondly amidst the vibrant sunset, waiting for her answer to shape our next delightful chapter. As I stood there, basking in the warmth of the setting sun, I couldn't help but wonder if the universe was finally granting me a break from the relentless absurdity Karen had thrust upon my life. The shimmer of golden rays mixed with the thick tension of confrontation felt like we were on the brink of revolution, one that could reshape the very fabric of our neighborhood. I leaned in, almost conspiratorially, fully embracing the notion that I could, maybe, just maybe, win this unlikely ally over. Picture it, Karen, a neighborhood united under one floppy-eared banner. No more strife, just free hugs, and the aroma of dog treats wafting through the air. Isn't that worth considering? My voice shot forth like a firework, injecting enthusiasm into the conversation, and I hoped it would disarm her steely determination. I could almost hear the gears in her mind grinding against each other like an old engine sputtering to life. But she still wore her skepticism like armor. "Jake, you're delusional. A dog parade? You think a bunch of yapping mutts can mend the world?" Her bravado was reminiscent of a castle made of cards, and I could almost see the cracks expanding. The laughter that bubbled amongst our little group felt refreshing, lifting away the weight of Karen's heavy-handed strategies. But just as I thought I was on the cusp of success, she barked back, striking without mercy. "And what about people like me, who just want peace and structure? This community isn't a circus." "Oh, Karen," I chuckled. "Do you really see this as a circus? Because I, for one, could use a bit of clownery in my life right about now. You and I both know Zeus isn't the villain in this tale. He's just a big, goofy softy. I'd rather have a neighborhood filled with laughter than silence suffocated by self-righteousness. Samantha was spending just enough time avoiding eye contact to suppress her snickers. But I could tell she was revving up for a second attempt to steer the ship away from this stormy harbor and into calmer waters. Her hazel eyes sparkled with a wicked idea, and that's when she jumped in with both feet. Karen, dear, let's be real. If you can survive this neighborhood for all these years, I believe you can handle a couple of mischievous pit bulls with a penchant for mud baths. For a brief moment, Karen's expression flickered as if she'd caught a whiff of something delicious, or perhaps humorous. There was an inkling of chaos rising to the surface, and I seized that infinitesimal crack that started to form in her fortress of disbelief. Just think of the cute social media moments, Karen. Your platform could be the next cat lady's success sweatshop. Instead of searching for imaginary monsters, you could be capturing Zeus on a leashed catwalk, wearing a tutu and sunglasses. Can you imagine how many likes that would get? I grinned, picturing the legacy of hilarious family videos featuring our furry fashionistas dancing under disco lights. And at last, the slowly dissolving walls of Karen's walls of defiance became all the more visible. Her eyes went wide as I painted a picture of a harmonious neighborhood that revolved around dogs, and as I took a breath, I felt the world shift slightly on its axis. Even if she didn't see herself sprinting down the road in a pastel blouse to rescue a critter from impending doom, I felt her curious energy start to perk up. What if, just what if, I began, pushing the envelope further, we organized a community dog day? Owners can take turns demonstrating tricks, share pup parenting tips, and we could have a bake sale with my mother's famous brownies. I know it sounds nuts, but think about the sweetening of old feuds into delightful connections. Who knows, you might even find a whole new side to doggy ownership. The tension that had cloaked the conversation like a damp blanket began to evaporate, revealing glimmers of possibility. I suppose it would be interesting, she began, her words tumbling out like an unsteady tower of blocks. But what about the safety concerns? It was a half-hearted protest. I could sense my arguments beginning to chip away at her formidable facade. Perhaps this might turn into a bizarre bonding experience. Wouldn't it be wonderful to see the human side of Karen buried beneath layers of entitlement? When she dropped her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "And what happens if Milo decides he likes my snacks more than socializing?" I couldn't resist the urge to dive deeper into this comedic narrative we were weaving together. "Imagine the chaos, Karen," I replied, a smirk creeping across my face. Zeus stealing snacks like the Fast and the Furious heist gone wrong. Milo would be chasing after him. It'd be a race for the ages. The crowd snickered, and even the grumpy neighbor lounging with his book chuckled softly. Slowly, but surely, Karen's lips curved ever so slightly upwards, a tease of a smile fighting to emerge. "So you're telling me I could become neighborhood royalty? Perhaps I could adjust the crown of my grand vision. No offense, but a proper ruler of peace and serenity deserves respect, and not one of those puppy parties." As I basked in the joy of our shared laughter, I realized we were in the midst of something remarkable, the transformation of our entire neighborhood vibe. With every word flinging itself across the yard like doggy moments caught on camera, I felt more confident we could bridge this entertaining gap between her stern demeanor and the joyful hijinks that awaited us. Was it possible that Karen Monroe, the infamous dog threat ambassador of our community, would not only relent, but join forces with me for the good of our four-legged friends? The notion teetered excitedly in the air like a pendulum, waiting for its fate to be sealed as we prepared ourselves for this roller coaster of unlikely camaraderie. Would the legendary ruler of peace and serenity embrace her quirkiest neighbors or stay entangled in her dogmatic crusade? Only time would tell. They say absurdity breeds connection, but could it also tame Karen? As Karen's lips smirked into something resembling a smile, I felt a spark of triumph match the energy in the air around us. Had I truly cracked the fortress of her entitlement? The neighbors shared glances with lifted eyebrows, their expressions a blend of skepticism and amusement. "Neighborhood royalty, you say?" she mused, her eyes narrowing playfully. "You'd best prepare yourself, Jake. As the ruler of this hypothetical dog-loving kingdom, I'm going to expect the finest treats and the dazzling charm of your furry subjects." The crowd erupted into laughter, buoyed by the realization that maybe, just maybe, we had whittled away at the granite block of Karen's stubbornness. "Treats? Oh, Karen, you haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg," I exclaimed, my imagination running wild with possibilities. Treats galore, baked goods that could make mothers weep with pride. We could even have our very own dog talent show. Each pit bull could strut its stuff while families cheered enthusiastically. I can already see Milo as the prime entertainer, charming everyone. And who knows, maybe your dog can join in. Wouldn't that rattle some chains? I was a strong believer that the absurdity of the situation could blossom into hilarity, and my enthusiasm filled the air like confetti at a birthday party. The small crowd around us began to imagine the antics, giggles cascading like a waterfall as they envisioned a place where Karen and I would be comrades rather than competitors. "Fine, fine, but I'll expect a show worthy of my status, you do understand." Karen shot back, her tone of feigned affront mixed with flexible joy. "This could be groundbreaking, but I won't just put my dog out there for the sake of neighborhood bonding without something in return. I demand fairness. If Zeus can flaunt his antics, Milo better bring his A-game." I chuckled at the absurdity of her demands, realizing that the ever-cynical Karen might just be warming up to the possibilities. Perplexingly, the woman who had once stalked around our neighborhood like a storm cloud was now talking as if we were planning a festival, albeit with her as the ringleader. What strange magic was this? With the hint of camaraderie briefly flickering between us, Samantha swooped in like the sidekick that she was. "And I, my fellow rulers of absurdity, will volunteer to organize the tailgate. We can have picnic parties, raising our goblets in praise of our canine companions. We could even entertain ourselves with an Elizabethan-style picnic, complete with costumes. Imagine Karen dressed as a queen, seated grandly on her throne, where her demands of royal snacks will be the main event." Everyone burst into laughter, and I felt a rush of contagious energy igniting the gathering. Karen's head fell back in genuine laughter, a perplexing sound that vibrated through the entire gathering. For a moment, she looked far less like the neighborhood tyrant and more like a mischievous ally. Could our bond become something beautiful, rather than another contentious battle? As the colliding currents of ideas swept through our conversation, it began to strike me. Perhaps this Community Dog Day wasn't just about uniting neighbors. It was about challenging ourselves to expand our perceptions of each other. What if we turned this gathering into a competition between neighborhoods? You can start an old-fashioned rivalry. We'll see who wins the title of Best Dog Grove, I shouted. Thoughts of various neighborhood pets flooding our community park flashed through my mind like an out-of-control slideshow. Would Zeus strut fabulously? Or would Milo steal the show with a dizzying display of exuberance? The very thought was hilarious enough that I could hardly contain my glee at manifesting a community that rippled with possibility. The more we laughed together, the more it became clear that the barrier between us and them was starting to thin, a vanishing act like my coffee every morning. "All right, Jake, I may just be interested in competing," Karen conceded, her voice dripping with a cheeky flair, "but I'll need reinforcements." And just like that, Karen's aura of superiority shifted ever so slightly, almost resembling camaraderie. "I want to harness my best ally, a canine-loving vet who can also judge the competition. Where might I find one?" she inquired, now seemingly enthusiastic. The gears in my mind began turning. Hadn't Dr. Roberts, the best vet in the area, just moved in next door? "Karen, you might just be calling the best expert around as your right-hand dog man. I'll set it up," I replied, already wondering whether I could assist in this hilarious metamorphosis. As the crowd's laughter turned into enthusiastic cheers, I couldn't help but marvel at how quickly and absurdly things had transformed. Gone was the Karen who sought to disrupt Milo's and my quiet existence. Now stood a woman ready to embrace glee right alongside me and my lovable pit bull. With the promise of future mischief and camaraderie resting on our shoulders, the neighborhood could push through the previous outlandish chaos together, even as I anticipated all the hilarious bloopers this event would inevitably spawn. If nothing else, I'd brand this thrilling experience in the annals of our community's history, So was it time to adopt a "Let's Befriend Karen" motto? Seemed fitting, as something ludicrous began blooming on our horizon. Would this day bring forth a new chapter of laughter and friendship in our bizarre abode of bickering neighbors and joyful dogs? Thanks for tuning into this insane entitled Karen story. If you're craving more wild Karen showdowns, check out our video on the right. Or if you trust YouTube's instincts, pick the one on the left. Whichever you choose, brace yourself. There's plenty more meltdown madness where today's story came from.